Hey everyone, it's Jason. Welcome to part 2 of the Red Dragon Inn, number 9, the Undercity. Yes, you can go back, check out part 1 if you haven't. We went over 3 of the characters. We went over Beast Sergeant, Yagella, Jet the Courier, and Dr. Teresi. We're going to go over the last 2 characters, and the extra drink decks and stuff like that, which will be Gale the Mycologist and Petra the Devious. And we just split it up into 2 videos because it was getting a little bit long. That way you don't have to watch a 2-hour long video right off the bat. You can split it up. Alright, so here we have Gale the Mycologist. He has some special stuff on his. There's a bunch of stuff in his turn order. Grow, plant at the beginning. Then his discard, draw, action, order a drink, and then finally he has gather. So there's 3 extra actions. He has a mushroom deck over on this side. Discard over here, and a planter box. So here's a bunch of extra rules. There's the back of his card. He's a pixie farmer. And then we also get his special Gale's Mushrooms deck. So he has a special deck just for his mushrooms. Let's look at his deck divider card there. So there he is. Another pixie. She's really fun. We just like his old staff there that's made of the fork and a screw. Very interesting. Alright, so he has a lot of rules. So he might be the more complex of the characters in terms of initially look at him. Then when we actually get into it, I think it's fairly simple. But basically, he has a mushroom deck. Reveal the top card of the mushroom deck, place it in your planter box. So you start with 1 out. Taking a rake token and placing it next to the revealed number. So he's going to get these little rake tokens here, which are his forks and his screwdrivers. And then, says in the planter box, mushroom grows over time while they're in the planter box. The planter box can hold up to 4 mushrooms. If you reveal a 5th, only must either discard and you'll reveal 1 or 1 already in the planter box. So the first part of his turn, he grows a mushroom. To grow a mushroom, move a trait counter down to the next number. At the beginning of your turn, grow all your mushrooms in your planter box, then plant a mushroom. For planting, pick a mushroom. Plant a mushroom with the top part of the mushroom deck, add to the box with a rake pointing towards its number. So, just a quick example is we'll have Ghost Castles, which will have a 2, a 1, and a 0. So we'll have different numbers next to it. So it starts at the 2, then when it grows, it goes to the 1, and then when it goes down to the 0. To harvest a mushroom, the mushroom harvest value is the number of the rake token currently points to. Some cards include a harvest effect. To play a harvest effect, discard mushroom from your planter box with a total harvest value greater than or equal to the amount required by the card. So again with this, if I harvest this when I first play it, it's at the 2, it counts as 2 harvest points. If I wait till it's at 0, it counts 0. So basically this one gets better if you harvest it quicker. Versus some of the other ones, go the other direction. So that's kind of how his decks can work. Play cards, grow them, they get different, and you have to figure out when to basically spend your points when it works the best. And then, to gather, at the end of your turn, you must gather any mushrooms in your planter box or on their bottommost number space by discarding those cards. If any gathered mushroom has a gather effect printed on the bottom, resolve that effect. Any gathered mushroom without them does nothing. Check that one we just shot. So it just gets down to 0, you do nothing, you just get rid of it. So you have to play them in turn. So again, it seems like a lot of rules, but I don't think it's that bad. It's basically, beginning of your turn, move everything down, play a new one if you can, and then at the end of your turn, get rid of any that have went over. Then during your turn, just spend them as a resource point. So he'll have his basic cards, which we went over in the first video. So I'm not going to go over them again in this one. I assume you probably watched part 1. But in case you hadn't, just a quick thing. Pretty much every character has these basic cards, which are the same ones in every deck. So I'm not going to keep rereading them for every deck. So we have Gambling, I'm in. We have 6 copies. We have 2 copies of I Raise. 2 copies of Winning Hand. Tip the barkeep. The barkeep thinks you should stop playing with the drinks. 2 copies of Bring Some Drinks for My Friend. And then his version of I Don't Think So, which says negate a sometimes card can only be affected by another I Don't Think So. Alright, then his actual deck. Excuse me. I reckon we're done here. You may play this card when another player plays a cheating card. You may not play it if you have already left the round of gambling. Negate the cheating card, you win that round of gambling. Was it you done trampled my crops? Pick another player, they lose 1 fortitude. Harvest 3, they lose 3 fortitude instead. So this is where the harvest mechanic comes in. So, again, going back to this ghost castle, if I have this at 2, it counts as 2 points per that harvest. I'd have to harvest something else that costs at least 1. So if I had both of these out, if they both came out at the same time, I'd only have 2 points. If they're on their second tier, I'd have 3 points. That way, until the end, they would have 3 points. I could try and harvest them before they could gather. They don't do anything when they're gathered. Or I could always do 2 and 2 if I had to. So some different options there. But that's how that works. So that's why I said it's not as bad once you kind of figure it out. No siree, these aren't edible. There's Roxana, the chef. Pick another player, they lose 2 fortitude. Harvest 3, they also gain 1 alcohol content. So this is really fun, because I like this idea of like, card do something that we can spend more potentially to get it. You might not have the right things, you might not be able to spend it. So it's that question of, do you hold a card in your hand until you can harvest enough, or do you spend it anyhow, and just have to not worry about it. We have 2 copies of Here's a Tough Row to Hoe. Plant a mushroom or grow a mushroom. In either case, pick another player, they lose 2 fortitude. 2 copies of The Moral is Mind Your Tools. She stepped on a rake. That's the other pixie, that's Caitlin, I believe. Pick another player, they lose 2 fortitude. 2 copies of Concern It, This Crop is Full of Skittleflies. Pick another player to lose 2 fortitude. Harvest 4, each other player loses 2 fortitude instead. Folks say I'm outstanding in my field. It's a funny joke. Grow all mushrooms in your planter box. Your turn ends now. Do not order a drink or gather. This kind of saves him for the next turn, which is interesting. Mushroom spores, pixie dust, same difference. Pick an alcohol content, add 1 alcohol content to a drink. Harvest 2, add 2 instead. We have 2 copies of it. This will keep burning off of my crops. Ignore a drink, reveal a drink first. Harvest 1, also order a drink. Ignore it must be placed on another player's drink me pile. 2 copies of Nobody Here But Us mushrooms. Ignore an action sometimes or anytime card that affects your fortitude, alcohol content, or gold. You may not use this to ignore gambling. You may plant a mushroom from your mushroom discard pile. That's fun. Alright. That pairs it. Someone threw a... I love these planter boxes, like at the bar. It's not like he's out in the field somewhere. Like he's at the bar, like drinking and gambling, and he started growing crop till he was in there. Ignore an action sometimes or anytime card that affects your fortitude. Harvest 4. The player who harvested played the card loses 2 fortitude. 2 copies of Dang It, Now I Need a New Tap. You may play this card anytime an action sometimes or anytime card would make you lose fortitude, reduce the fortitude lost by 2. Harvest 2, ignore the card instead. Ignoring is really good because you can make people like lose cost. 2 copies of Can't You See I'm Sharpening My Tools? You may play this card when you must ante instead of ante and leave the round of gambling or ignore an event. Some of these crops as good as gold. You may play this card when you're about to lose gold. Use gold from the inn rather than from your own stash. Harvest 4, also gain 2 gold from the inn. 2 copies of mushrooms can grow just about anywhere in the bottom of a bar stool. Plant a mushroom or grow a mushroom. And then finally we have 2 copies of just the thing to wash down dinner. Reduce the alcohol content of the drink you are about to drink by 1. Harvest X, reduce the alcohol contents by X plus 1 instead. Nice. Then we have his mushrooms. So most of these we only have 1 copy of. We have Ghost Tassels. But we do got 2 copies of Sparkling Silver Taps. 2 copies of Spongy Morals. Fungus of Legend. So that one's 0, 0, and 4. So this one you have to wait till it gets to the end. But you're going to be able to pay a lot. Because the thing is, if you don't use these by the end of your turn, you have to gather them. So it's that risk-reward thing. You have to figure out what you're going to do. We have 2 copies of Your Classic Tall Cap. We have the Ever Shroom. This mushroom is never gathered, so this will hit 3 and then always sit there. So that's kind of a fun effect. We have some more effect ones here. We have Spore Beds, who don't have a 3 spot. They only have 2, but gather, grow a mushroom, or reveal 2 mushrooms, plant 1, discard the other. We have 2 copies of Red Trumpeter. Gather, gain 1 fortitude. Wall Crawling Charlies. Gather, lose 1 alcohol content. Fancy Heirloom Lichen. Pick another player, they pay you 1 gold. And the Murder Tap, which has nothing but says gather, pick another player, they lose 2 fortitude. So that's pretty fun. He has a very interesting deck. That gathering mechanic, it makes you have to kind of pay attention to other things that are going on, which I think is a really fun idea. So maybe a little bit more advanced of the characters, where you know you can sell with the way these decks work. 1 character's a little bit more advanced, 1's a little bit easier. You know, I kind of say Beast Sergeant Yelga is probably the easy one. Doesn't really have too much else going on. Jet's probably second because lots of his stuff just revolves on that momentum meter, going up or down, but there's not too much. And then it would probably be Dr. Teresi or Dale the Mycologist. I'd probably say are about even because each use different resources in different ways. I might give the slight edge to difficulty to Teresi because you have to hunt down certain resources, and then when you have them, now you have option in your hand on which card to play. Versus Dale, it's just, do I gain this extra effect or not? I can't afford it, ignore it, you know, type of idea. Alright, then we have our 5th character, which is our boss character. Ooh, what we got there? Our 5th main character is we have Petra the Devious. I like that they started adding bosses. Although having the other Red Dragon in-game Greyport, Battle for Greyport, I know they added what's her name? Rip Snarl is the villain, and then the hunter, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head. Those 2, and add some of the other villain characters from that, like Tulga Snarf. I wish they would add more from the other sets into these games. That would be kind of cool. Well, that'd be neat, like an extra new villain set would be neat. Alright, so she has a couple of different things here. She has, on her turn, discard plotted cards, gain 1 Hellfire for each card discarded. Discard, draw, plot a card, action, order a drink, and drink. So her whole effect is she has plotted cards up here, and she has a Hellfire counter. So, move this down. She's going to have this Hellfire meter. It says, basically things are going to happen. You're going to move your little Hellfire tracker we're going to get. Let me see if I can grab the token here for it. A little Hellfire token. Right there. We'll keep track. When it hits the red, the fire, then you do the effect. Just pick another player. They lose 2 fortitude. They may respond to this as though it came from an action. So she constantly has a meter that's going to let her do extra damage. There is a reverse side to that, but we'll look at that in a minute. Because we have the boss deck as well. But we'll look at the regular, just player version first. So the villains have a little bit different back. They don't have like the little blocks. Now she's a Demon King Rogue. Let's flip her card over and kind of see how her deck works. Setup: put the Hellfire card next to your player on the lowest number spot. Schemes: some of Petra's cards have a subtype scheme. These have different effects if you plot them face down in front of you before playing them. You may play a scheme either from your hand or from the plotted cards above your playmat. Plotting: after you discard and draw, or whenever a card says, you may plot a card. The plotted card, place it from your hand face down the plotted card area. Area face down. You may plot any card, but remember, only schemes may be played. So this is where she gets a little bit tricky, because you can kind of bluff by putting any card down. You might not be able to play it. Or you might be able to play it and choose not to. Or you might not meet the condition. Playing plotted schemes. If you play a plotted scheme, it has a different effect indicated by its flip icon instead. So just a quick example. We're going to have this sometimes scheme, and you'll have a little flip card. You'll do something different if you play it. If you play it from the plotted scheme pile versus just from playing it from your hand. At the beginning of your turn, discard all plotted cards. Gain 1 Hellfire for each card discarded. And the Hellfire game keeps track, and you keep going there. So basically, during her turn, beginning of turn, you discard all your plotted cards. You start with nothing. You could gain your Hellfire, might do some extra fortitude damage. But then what you do is you draw your discard, then you play 1 plotted card. There might be other cards you play that might let you place other plotted cards or do something. But yeah, you can play your you can play your card then whenever from the plotted thing, and then you get it. So I think most of the time you're only gonna have 1, maybe 2 cards down there, because you're gonna keep getting rid of them every turn. So we'll kind of see how it goes when we actually look at her deck. So she has her 6 I'm gambling, I'm in cards like everybody else. 2 copies of I Raise. I love with this though is that the villains have their own different pictures. For that stuff, we have 2 copies of I'm Winning. We have 2 copies of Wench, bring some drinks for these fiends. So this is the villain bar that they go to, and this is their villain wench instead of our barkeep. So I like that they kept that as the theme, even though they could have had her at this bar with everybody else. They kept the villain theme with it. The wench thinks you should stop playing with the drinks. And her I don't think so card. So there's her basic card that she gets. Alright, then her regular deck that you have. Of course I'm cheating. Who isn't? Take control of a round of gambling. Pick another player and force them to leave the round of gambling. Scheme. I'll just call this a scheme or plot, I guess. You may pick an additional player to leave the round. So if you play this from your plotting, now you get to use that effect as well. Were those your cards? Take control of a round of gambling. In addition, each other player in the round discards a card. Draw a card from your character deck for each card discarded this way. I'm on a hot streak. Take control of a round of gambling. You may play a plot card from your hand. If you do, gain a Hellfire. So a plot card would just have to have that symbol. We have 2 copies of Hot and Sharp, Just Like Me. Pick another player, they lose 2 fortitude. You may play a plot card from your hand. If you do, gain a Hellfire. We do have a Tip the Wench card that got mixed in with the rest, so she does have that one as well. Pick your poison. Pick another player, they lose 1 fortitude. This fortitude can't be reduced, negated, or ignored. 2 copies of Hot 5. There's Rip Snarl. You may pick another player, they lose 1 Fortitude, or pick another player, they lose Fortitude equal to your Hellfire. This is fine. Making the meme. Vasilo and the wench back there. Who has a name whose name I can't remember off the top of my head. Each other player loses 1 Fortitude. If you have at least 2 Hellfire, pick another player, that player loses an additional Fortitude. Where there's smoke. Pick another player, they lose 2 Fortitude. You may discard up to 4 cards from your hand, gain 1 Hellfire for each card discarded this way. 2 copies of This will stoke the old fire, ignore a drink. Instead, reduce the alcohol content of a drink you're about to drink by 2. Add the effect, gain 2 Fortitude to it. So you can either ignore it, or you can reduce it but gain some health, essentially. 2 copies of This drink is totally lit. Reduce the alcohol content of the drink you're about to drink by 1. If you have at least 2 Fortitude, ignore this drink instead. This is kind of a neat thing, because that Hellfire is going to constantly be gaining, going up and down. But, they're not up and down, but you're going to gain it. It's going to restart over. Sometimes better is to keep forcing it, so you can get the extra Fortitude damage. Whereas cards like this, where it's like, maybe not forcing it might be better, so you can use some of these other higher effects for it. 2 copy of It's Better with a Drop of This. Reduce the alcohol content of a drink by 2. Instead, add 2 alcohol content to a drink. This is a neat one because it gives you the option. I love anything that gives you options. I Run Hot. You may play this card when an action sometimes or anytime drink or event card would cause you to lose Fortitude. Reduce that Fortitude by 1. Instead, reduce it to 0. Oh, we had 2 copies of that. Sorry. 2 copies of I've Got Friends in Dark Corners. You may play this card when you're about to lose gold. Use gold from the inn rather than your own stash. In addition, pick another player. They pay you 1 gold. Everything's going according to plan. Discard a plot card. If you have one, you do not gain Hellfire. Ignore an action sometimes or anytime card that affects your Fortitude. Alcohol content, you may not use this to ignore a card. Or ignore a round of gambling. Yeah, this is very interesting. We have Too Hot to Handle. Oh, he's burning that sword. Ignore an action sometimes or anytime card that affects your Fortitude. In addition, the player who played that card loses 1 Fortitude. 2 copies of Look, Dastardly Schemes Don't Plan Themselves. There's her earlier picture before she spilled her drink on there. You must play this card when you must ante instead of anteing or leaving a round of gambling or ignoring it. In either case, you may plot a card from your hand. So this is what's helping you to play these plot cards and you to play them otherwise. Is it hot in here or is it just me? Gain 1 Hellfire. Cool. So that's first. Yes, it's a very interesting like back and forth on how her deck works. You get like play stuff, kind of hidden mechanic, little mischievous. Just a mention for other rules. It says you may look at your face down plotted cards at any time. Plotted cards may be played as though they're in your hand, but are not actually part of your hand. This means you may not discard them for effects that cause you to discard. Also means that players may not look at them if they play effect while you look at your hand. You may only plot, only your character cards may not play cards that end up in your hand, such as like Murgrass Blessing. So if another character puts one of their cards in your hand for some reason, you can't use theirs. Also, it says you may put any card face down this way, but only may play schemes from the plotted card area. There's no limit to the number of cards going to be in your plotted area. So that's something I find weird. There's no number, but if every turn you have to discard all of them and start over, I don't really know why you're going to get how you're going to get more than a few out at a turn, or why you would bother to play a bunch of them. Yeah. But just a scheme may be plotted. Scheme may be plot. A scheme played from the plotter may be responded just like cards from your hand. So that's one of the reasons why you would play more of them, because if they're action cards, you can only play your one action. But if I plotted this card, it's a sometimes, so I can trigger more of them by having them down. So that makes sense to have a couple down, because your opponent will know it's gonna hit, and then you might have the chance to play it anyhow. The risk reward though of it is, if I place it down as if I plot this card and it doesn't trigger, now I've lost it because it goes to my discard pile. Versus if I keep it in my hand, I could trigger it on a later turn when I know that effect's gonna happen. So it's kind of a gamble. But they stay down the entire time during your opponent's turn. So then what we also have is her boss deck, which is out of the same backing, but it's going to have this little dragon in the corner. So I mean, that's your 15 card deck that you add just so you can play the variant of 1 versus 2. So one player can play a boss character with 15 extra cards. And this is really neat because the villains get these extra cards and they gain basically like boosted abilities. Their cards look really cool. They have like their ultimate forms. So she also gets a Hellfire boss battle, which now goes up to 5 instead of the other side that was only 3. And it says, draw a card from your character deck, pick another player that loses 2 fortitude, and discard 3 cards from their hand. They will respond to this effect as though it came from an action. So now do they not just lose 2 fortitude, they also discard 3 cards, and you get a card from your deck, which really helps you out. She's going to get 2 copies of It's Not Hot in Here, It Is Me. And she's kind of turning into like a brimstone. Draw 3 cards from your character deck. You may plot a card from your hand. If you do, gain 1 Hellfire. That is really mean. 2 copies of Do You Smell Burning? I set Jet on fire. Each other player loses 1 fortitude. If you have at least 3 Hellfire, each other player loses 2 fortitude instead. 2 copies of No, I Didn't Order That. Ignore a drink. Instead, give a drink you're about to drink to another player. First rule of villainy. I love the first rule of villainy cards. Burn it with fire. Each other player discards a sometimes card from their hand unless they reveal a hand with no sometimes cards. Each other player loses 1 fortitude. This card can't be negated or ignored. Then we do have some cards you just get extra copies of. It's a better off with a drop of this. Where There's Smoke. We have 2 more copies of Too Hot to Handle. This is fine. Another I Don't Think So. This is what makes bosses interesting. It's the only time they get a second copy of that. Then her last 2 new cards are Foosh. Ignore an action sometimes or anytime card that affects your fortitude, alcohol content, or gold. You may not use the ignore around your gamble and gain 1 Hellfire. So that's really fun. I like the boss decks because they let you get an extra deck with some more super powered cards. You can also play a boss against a boss if you have another deck set that has boss cards. But yeah, that's Petra. So yeah, her deck gets a little bit more difficult, I would say, than some of the other ones. I'd say she's at least second, like, in difficulty. Like, just because it's like you have to kind of gamble your cards to play or lose them. But bosses are usually a little bit harder. Alright, then our next mini character is Otto. So we do have an Otto deck here. So Otto is a special thing they started adding. This is the 3rd time he's been added into the game. He was in the Smorgas box, which you can buy, which is like old storage box, or he was in the Munchkin 2-player set. So what Otto does is he lets you play a 2-player or a 3-player game with 2 players. So this is if you have 2 people and you want to play a game. But it's kind of like, kind of dumb that we just are attacking each other back and forth. So Otto works as a third player that is automated. You'll see he has a 1 to 6 and a 1 to 6, so one's for one player, one's for the other. And he's just there to kind of give you guys someone else to target and someone to target you. So it says Otto, on his turn, Otto reveals a card on his action phase when his turn begins in a round of gambling, and whenever he is affected by a drink, action, sometimes anytime card that affects his fortitude, alcohol content, or gold. So he just reveals a card from his deck. And depending on what it says is what you do. If your side of Otto passes out, reset the track, then gain 1 gold from the inn, or draw 2 cards from your character deck. So basically, if you knock him out, he gets too drunk, he just gets to restart over. He just keeps coming back. You can't actually defeat him. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and look at the back of his card. So he has a unique setup. So it says, place Otto's player mat so that one track faces one faces the other. Put a fortitude marker on each 6 and alcohol content on each 0. So instead of going to 20 for each, he only has 6. Choose 2 5-card faction decks for Otto and shuffle them together. This set comes with 2 of them. The other ones each come, I think, with 4. So that gives you 8, 9, 10, 11, 8, 10 total. So you get a lot of different options so far. On Otto's turn, reveal a card from his deck and follow the instructions in the action box. Then Otto drinks from the drink deck. Response. When he's affected by a drink action, sometimes anytime card that affects his fortitude, alcohol content, or gold, reveal the top card of the deck. Follow the instructions on the sometimes box. Gambling. On Otto's turn of round of gambling, reveal the top card of the deck. Follow the instructions of the gambling or cheating box. If Otto runs out of card during the round of gambling, do not reshuffle his deck until the round is over. Otto bonus. Whenever Otto passes out, either track resets the track. That player closest to the track may gain 1 gold from the inn or draw 2 cards from their character deck. So he's just an automated deck you play. Whenever something triggers him or hits him, you draw a card and you see what it tells you to do. He has no hand. So anything telling you to like force him to discard a card doesn't work on him. If anything tells him to drink, or he doesn't. If he gets to drink, he drinks right from the drink deck. He doesn't have a special drink me pile. Alright, so let's look at his cards. So we have his Berserker version, a little bit axer. He has like a chicken costume, rooster. So yeah, if he has his regular draws an action, says Otto, angry now. Reset both of Otto's tracks. Sometimes, anytime your action, player who plays this card loses 2 fortitude and gambling. Otto leaves the round of gambling. His second one, Otto needs a new chicken pelt. Gambling, Otto is in control of the round of gambling. Sometimes Otto ignores the card. And gambling, winning hand, Otto takes control of the round. Next card to take control must be a cheating card. Otto's out of control. Each other player loses 2 fortitude. Otto loses 1 fortitude on each track. Drink, Otto ignores it. And some gambling, he passes. Otto's got an axe to grind. Each player with the most fortitude loses 3 fortitude. Otto loses 2 fortitude on that player's track. Sometimes has no effect. And gambling, I raise. Otto takes control of the round. Each player enters an additional gold. And then his last one for the Berserker, Otto's rattling apart. Each player loses 1 fortitude. Otto loses 1 fortitude on each track. No effect and pass. So it gives you a bunch of different options. And then he also has his second class or faction, which is his Spelunker version. Prospecting mode online. The player with the most gold pays 2 gold to the inn. Sometimes the player who played card pays 1 gold to the inn. And cheating, Otto cheats and ends the round of gambling. All anti-gold goes to the inn. Otto is rebooting after a fall. Discard a top card prior to the drink deck, then Otto's turn ends. Otto ignores it and pass. Auto deploys climbing spikes. Each player loses 1 fortitude. Sometimes, the player who plays this card loses 1 fortitude. Gambling pass. Auto sharpens the climbing pick. The player with the most fortitude loses 2 fortitude. Drink. Auto ignores it. Gambling. Auto leads the round of gambling. And finally, Auto needs more rope. Each other player plays 1 gold to the ing. No effect, and gambling 1 gold from the pot goes to the ing, then Auto passes. You can kind of see his Splunker, he's going to be playing with, messing around with your gold and some of the cheating stuff. His Berserker, he's going to do a lot of fortitude damage, sometimes at the cost of himself. There's a bunch of other classes. There's like Rogue and Warrior and Wizard. A bunch of different ones. Like I say, there's 8 other different ones. So if you like this whole idea of playing with Auto, or you're gonna play a 2-player game, those might be worth trying to hunt down. So you can play some additional decks. So that's pretty fun there as well. All right. So our next deck of cards is our drink deck. Because what would a tavern be without a drink deck? There was a back of Auto's card, which we didn't show. So yeah, every set has a deck of drink cards. These are the different drinks you're going to get. As you combine your games, you buy more. You can always mix and match these as well. Take out duplicates, add in just unique cards. Take out, if you don't like certain ones, take them out, add different ones. Back of the card will just list every single one that's in here. What's always fun is that these have a bunch of new ones in them. There are some duplicates as well. There is a variant that you can play called, basically, it's the Bar Tavern, I don't know what it's called. If you have more than enough 30 cards for each deck, so if like you bought 4 different games, you have 4 different decks of cards, you can basically shuffle them all together, draw a 30-card deck, that's your first deck of cards. Then when that runs out, then you start your next deck instead of reshuffling it. That lets you play through more and more of your decks without having to like have one giant stack at a time. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at what we have in here. So we're gonna have a Mushroom Pale Ale, which will have a fortitude of 1. Fortitude? Alcohol content of 1. Mushroom Pale Ale with a chaser. So this will make you drink an extra one. I always love on the artwork here. So there's just the cup and then the back. Now we have an extra drink back there. So some people might choose to take out the chasers. Maybe they don't want to have that much extra. That's always an option. Or you could do the vice versa, is take out all the regular ones and just play chasers. And also now it's going to make the game a little bit speedier that way. Stalactite drip coffee. Just the thing for helping you hang on. Halfling stout. It makes a halfling feel like a holing. Bright Shroom tonic. Draw 2 character cards from your deck. Just the lift that you need. We did have a halfling stout with a chaser. The Pixie Punch. When you need a little private pixie time, it's gotta be Pixie Punch. And then Pixie Punch with a chaser. Fairy Ale, a microbrew, obviously. Fairy Ale with chaser. A wine, classy. Wine with a chaser. The classic light ale. There's no nonsense brewing of the Undercity. The light ale with a chaser, which chasing it with another light ale. We have Pixie's Portion. Pay 1 gold to the inn. You mean that's all I get? That's pretty funny. Just small drink in a Pixie's hand. Something on the rocks. Not sure what it'll be, but it'll be good. And there's literally rocks in there. I love the jokes in this game. Orcish Rock Gut. -2 fortitude, but if you're an orc, you get 2 alcohol instead. Your stomach will hate you for days. The Elven Wine. The elves drink it, so it must be good. Elven Wine with a chaser. The Holy Water. It tastes divine. Troll Swill. If you're a troll, you gain 2 alcohol. The trick is drinking around the eyeball. Rough Remedy. If you gain alcohol content from this drink, you may discard up to 5 cards from your hand, gain 1 fortitude for each card discarded this way. You'll need more than just a spoonful of sugar. Mead. If the mead was not to resolve a drink event or a chaser, you may split it with another player. Mead cannot be affected by another card that splits it. It's so good you just have to share. Dark and Dwarfy. +3 if you're a dwarf instead. Dragon Breath Ale. Brewed under the direct supervision of real fire-breathing dragons. TM. Fortified Wine. It makes healing fun. The Dwarven Firewater. Strong enough to stunt your growth. Then we get drinking event cards. These are always fun. So, drinking contest. Each player reveals a drink from the drink deck and drinks it. The player who revealed the drink with the highest alcohol content, even if they avoided the effects of the drink, wins 1 gold from each other player. If there's a tie, the player who tied reveals the drink again until there's a winner. The effects of the drink event are ignored. If the effects of drink event cards are ignored and they count as 0 alcohol content. Round down the house. Reveal a drink with possible chasers from the drink deck. If you reveal a drink event before you reveal a drink, discard and reveal again. Each player, including you, drinks a copy of revealed drink. And then finally we have the monsters kicked open the door. In turn order, each player may attack the monsters by discarding an action card that would cause a player to lose fortitude or gain alcohol content. For each player that does not discard an action card this way, loses 2 fortitude. So that's kind of a fun little different way to play that. Alright, so that was our drink deck. And then to go with that is we have our brand new tavern. So this is an alternate gameplay mode you can do if you would like as well. So this adds events. I said there was no events. I was wrong. There is event cards in here because there's tavern events. So this is the Star Mole drinking hole. I believe it's, I want to say set 5, no, set 8, I think. Set 5. I think set 5 added more taverns, I believe. The pub crawl set. Each player puts a character card from their hand face down on top of their character deck if possible. So how does... I was trying to find the specific rules for this. And now that I'm looking for it, I can't find it. 1 second. Alright, so I was just double checking the rulebook. It actually says it requires set 8, which is pub crawl. So it was the previous set that came out that added the other taverns. But it has specific tokens or rules in there that are needed to play it. So if you have set 8, this is a great addition. If you didn't have set 8, these kind of just sit around and don't do anything then. But there's various things that let you play events, essentially, that does this. What's also neat is that each pub or each tavern comes with their own special little drink decks. We have the Star Mole drinking hole. It has extra 6 card deck here. Special drinks that are just for this tavern. I think there was 5 other taverns in that set. So there's the backs of those cards. So they look different than the regular drink deck, just so you can't get them confused. But we'll see what those special drinks do. Otherwise, they work. Other than that, they work exactly like regular drinks. We have the Old Fei-Shing. You put this card in front of you. While it's there, you may play it as a sometimes card with the effect or an action, sometimes or anytime card that affects your fortitude. The Hot Chocolate a la Mole. That's so neat. I love that. The Undercity with a chaser. Arbolo's Absinthe. So I wonder if Arbolo is the barkeep from the set. This card resolve a chaser. It has plus drink. And then finally we have Topsiders To Go Cup. Crawl to a new tavern. Pub crawlers love this one. So then you have to move to one of the new taverns. There's a whole thing. That's why I think you have to have it, is because you have adding one tavern doesn't do anything. You have to have several because you're moving through all the different taverns. As opposed to, you have your drink deck, but I think you have to try and go through all the different taverns and get different drinks. Alright, so then the last thing we're going to show off in this video is special prize cards. So these have been introduced lots of times. They were promo cards, but they're showing up in some of the sets as well. And these just add an extra little variant you can do to the gambling section of the game if you would like. So it says, prize variant, sweeten the pot during a round of gambling. To play at this variant, add any number of unique prize cards to the inn at the start of the game. Whenever a player starts a round of gambling, that player must choose one of the prize cards at the inn and add it to the pot. The player who takes the anti-gold wins the prize and follows the instructions at the appropriate time. This will cause the prize to move to the prize bin, a holding area for used prizes. If a player starts a round of gambling and no prizes in the inn, move all prizes from the prize bin to the inn. Choose the prize as normal. So you go through the deck once before you reshuffle it back up. If the pot goes to the inn, the pot goes to the inn with it. A prize is not gold, so it cannot be stolen from the pot with cards like Eve's Sleight of Hand. Check your rulebook first, or Slugfest Games website for more clarifications. Yes, these are just extra little fun cards that do stuff. So we're going to have the Straw of Misdirection. The next time you would drink a drink during another player's turn, add this card to the prize bin. Give that drink to another player. This effect counts as though you played a sometimes card on that drink. So if you win the round of gambling, you get one of these prizes. Then when you spend it, it goes back to the prize bin. And if it runs out, someone else will eventually have the chance of getting cards that have been replayed again. Gale's Finest Mushroom. When you win this prize, add it to the prize bin and gain 1 Fortitude. And then the last one is Speedy Runner Stopwatch. At the end of your action phase, add this card to the prize bin and then end your turn. Do not order drinks or drink. Yeah, so just fun little extra cards that let you add into the game. Again, you can collect these over time and then have, 10, 15, 20 of them, give you a bunch of varieties. Pick and choose what you like for your game. Just add that little extra something to the gambling thing and change the game up a little bit. Alright, so that's what we have for Red Dragon Inn number 9, the Undercity. So yeah, go back. For some reason you didn't check out part 1 to see the first couple of characters. Part 2 here, obviously, through the second. Part 3, if you want to come back for, we're going to go over the Kickstarter exclusive, the Collector's Edition content, and exclusive cards in there. So if you have no interest in getting the Collector's Edition or finding the Kickstarter version of the game, which I don't know if those are mutually exclusive. I just know that some stuff was Kickstarted and there was a Collector's Edition of the board game. But they all came in the one box together, so my assumption is the Collector's Edition contains all the Kickstarter stuff, but I don't want to promise that. In case they re-release the Collector's Edition later on down the board, they might not have the Kickstarter stuff in it. Yeah, so if you're not interested in that, go ahead and skip the next video. And see you guys in more Red Dragon games. Otherwise, see you guys there. Bye.